All right, welcome back to another episode of Two Playing Sports. Today we're gonna do again something different. We're gonna just kind of project the outlook of this offense, not rank where it's gonna be amongst the SEC, but what are the stats gonna look like for these guys? Is Jackson Arnold gonna have a breakout year, or is everyone in the national media right about how many mistakes he makes, and is it going to be a big dud for year one as a starter for Jackson Arnold? So we'll dive deeper into that here in a second. And wide receivers, running backs, how does this offensive line fare in this new iteration of Oklahoma football in the SEC? Before we get into everything, make sure to follow or subscribe. Follow us on all social media. Comment in the section down below. Let us know what you think. I saw a couple suggestions in there from the last comment from the last video or first one back. I appreciate those a lot. We're definitely going to try to incorporate those in future videos. So if you do have any suggestions on what this kind of stuff you want to talk about or listen about, um, I'm sure we're going to start doing live streams here in the near future, so we can kind of do that stuff and interact with you guys more like we used to. So hit the comment section below and then share the video. That helps us out a ton as well. Get more people that love Oklahoma football and kind of just want to hang out and not listen to the same recruiting information that you can find at 17 other recruiting channels and the radio and articles. We're trying to be a little bit different here. All right, let's get into it. So, offensive preview here, kind of seeing what Oklahoma at each position is going to do statistically. Obviously, if these are projections. We're going to take some of the over-unders that are set by Vegas. But we're going to start with QB1. A big question mark for Oklahoma, but also someone that as Oklahoma fans believe can be just as good as any of the recent quarterback success that Oklahoma's had with Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Spencer Rattler in year one, Caleb Williams in his lone year at Oklahoma. Jackson has that type of talent. So, Brandon, I'm going to kick it over to you because you're more of our numbers guy here. What did you find with Jackson? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start with Jackson Arnold when you're doing an offensive preview. He's the signal caller. He's QB1. He's the guy that we're all excited about. Last season he threw for 563 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Most of those numbers all come from that Arizona game. And, the 3 interceptions in the Arizona game definitely hurt. It's a big reason why we lost the game. But he also made some really nice plays in that game, I thought, as his first time as a starter against an Arizona team that was pretty good last season, especially on the defensive side of the ball. He threw for 339 yards in that game, 2 touchdowns. He had one really nice deep ball to Brennan Thompson, if I remember correctly. We were there, but we were a little bit loose. He made a really nice play where he escaped the pocket and threw a back corner touchdown pass to Nick Anderson. So, he showed a lot of promise in that game, showed some during the season when he came in the BYU game, was able to seal the game with the first down pass on 3rd down. Obviously, he looked good playing against Tulsa, but, that's to be expected. I think when you're looking at Jackson Arnold, I've talked about it multiple times throughout this offseason. I think this receiving core that he has is as good as it's been since Baker Mayfield in 2017. And I get Jaden Gibson goes down, and I hate that for Jaden Gibson, but, we've talked about it. A lot of people are saying he was poised for a big season. We kind of both had him pegged as wide receiver 4 or 5, just because of how deep that room is. So while you hate it for Jaden Gibson, on the overall team look of things, I don't think it's going to ruin you. We got to start over. Joey just walked on like a fat bitch. All the Jaden Gibson things is pretty much all I'm doing is saying is even without him, that receiving core is still very loaded. You bring in a guy like Deion Burks, who looked like a stud in a spring game, a guy who's going to bring a lot of explosion to the offense. Jalil Farouk is a guy that I think was pretty solid last year. Nick Anderson looked like a monster as a freshman last season. There's a lot of promise in this receiving core room. So I think when you go with JA, you have to look back at what Dylan Gabriel did last year because Jackson wasn't the starter, Dylan was. So Dylan played against a less hard of a schedule, and he has a lot more experience. So I don't expect Jackson to put up Dylan Gabriel numbers last year, which were about 3,600 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He also added about 400 on the ground and 12 rushing touchdowns. So for me, for Jackson Arnold, I think a great season would be around that 3,000 yard passing mark, 3,100, something like that. About 25 touchdowns, 10 picks, 9, 10, 11 picks, so somewhere in that range. And I think if he does that with the defense taking a leap that I expect it to take, I think that's a 9-10 win team. I think, on the worst end case for Jackson Arnold, the SEC defenses are just real fast. He's making a lot of mistakes. I think you're looking somewhere like 2,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 or so picks, which would not be a great season for us. I think if something like that happens, we're closer to that 6 or 7 win mark. So, I mean, there's a lot on Jackson's shoulders here, but that's QB1 in the SEC.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that is going to help Jackson get there is wide receivers, and we'll talk about them as individuals here in a little bit. But we all know that Big 12 defense has never really been great for whatever reason. Either it's the offenses in the Big 12 are just schematically better, which some people have tried to make that argument. SEC defenses are just faster and bigger, which is also true in a good argument that can be made. So can these Oklahoma receivers, which I think they can be, especially how Emmett Jones has been recruiting over this last year, and then how really this staff since Brent Venables with Jeff Lebby here over the last couple of seasons, how they recruited that wide receiver position. They're bigger and just as fast, which is one thing Oklahoma hasn't had for their quarterbacks, really. I mean, I think the biggest wide receiver we've had was CeeDee Lamb, and he's tall, but like now you have 3 guys or 4 guys about that same size. So you're not looking. These targets are bigger and have just as much speed as the smaller guys that Oklahoma's had in recent history. That being said, I think that's where if these guys can get separation, it's gonna obviously make Jackson's life easier. Is Latrell's offense gonna be explosive enough and get guys open quick enough? That's also, I don't think, a question mark, but can it be done at this level? Because he's only really had these coordinating opportunities and head coaching opportunities at lower levels of college football. So those are the questions I have. And if those two things are on the positive side, then Jackson Arnold, I think, definitely has that capability of being in that in the stat range that you just said, about 3,000, 3,100 yards, especially if he's healthy. I think that's easy because in year one of Dillon Gabriel at Oklahoma, he had 2,900 or so yards, and he missed, I think it was game and a half or 2.5 games. I mean, he missed games after that concussion he suffered against TCU. So he was pacing to have about the same, if not more, yards, as he did in year 2 at Oklahoma, but also was pacing for more turnovers. So I'm saying if Jackson can play all 12 games, he should be around 3,200 yards, 30-ish touchdowns passing, 10 interceptions. I think while it's going to be frustrating to watch because as Oklahoma fans, we really haven't seen a quarterback make too many mistakes. Spencer Rattler was the one that probably forced the most footballs when it came to the throwing game, but I don't know his stats off the top of my head. I don't think he really didn't turn the ball over a lot. He just put the ball at risk a lot. Luckily the defensive backs just had bricks for hands, so it didn't work against them in a lot of those situations. It's going to be interesting on the ground. I think he's got an opportunity to be Kyler Murray like when it comes to his running game. I think his speed downhill he's bigger. Speed downhill is just as good, if not better, than Dillon Gabriel. And Dillon is a good athlete. I think that's something we were talking about earlier. Someone that isn't really considered an athlete at the quarterback position or a dual threat quarterback. But I mean, you look at his stats last year. He, like you said, put up like 500-600 yards, and you remember the Texas game. I was actually watching it at work. Had some downtime, and someone posted the full game on YouTube and started watching it. He was cooking him on the ground. So I think Jackson has that ability to do something similar statistically. The turnovers are going to be what's going to be different from last year to this year with Dillon Gabriel and Jackson Arnold, because Dillon was good at taking care of the football.
Yeah, so we both have him in that about 3,100 yard range. You have 30 touchdowns. That would be elite. I mean, if he hits that 30 mark with 10 interceptions, we're going to be in a really good spot. 1,000 yards rushing, that's what Kyler Murray did in his 1 year at Oklahoma. So I'd shoot a little less. I mean, Kyler Murray rushed for 1,000. I think it's a little less than that, but I see him in that 500 yard mark. I agree with you. I think he's a better runner than Dillon Gabriel. So we'll see. I think so. Next, you go to the receiver room that I've been talking about. Andrew Anthony. When that guy went down last season, it almost felt like the entire pass offense just changed altogether. He was leading the team in receiving yards, and he went down. He had 429 yards, through about 5.5 games because he went down. That was week 6 we played Texas, right? Something like that. I think we're 5-0. Yeah. So through about 5.5 games, he had 429 yards. He was pacing for a 1,000-yard season. Big loss for the team. He's going to be back now. That's going to be huge for Oklahoma. Then you look at Jalil Farouk, had about 700 yards last year. Nick Anderson, he caught like 38 passes or something last year, but he had 798 yards and 10 touchdowns. The dude averaged 21 yards a catch. You have to expect him to just continue to improve, which is going to be really scary for opposing defenses. And then Deion Burks, playing at Purdue last season, which Jackson Arnold, I assume, is going to be better than Purdue's quarterback from last year. I don't even know who it was. Put up 629 yards and 7 touchdowns at Purdue. I expect him to take a leap there too. I think this receiver room has the potential with those 4 as your main 4. Like those are your big 4 there. I think 2 of them could be 1,000-yard receivers. I think Nick Anderson and Deion Burks are probably those 2,000-yard receivers. Andrew Anthony, I think, just with recovering from that injury and maybe being pushed down the depth chart a little bit because of it, is going to be your number 3 at about 700 yards or so. And then I think your Jalil Farouk probably takes a drop back just with all these receivers around him to about the 500-600 yard mark. But that's going to total your 3,000, 3,100. Nick Anderson, if he can go for another 10 touchdown season, would be nice. Deion Burks, I expect him to be close to a double-digit touchdown season. And, there's a lot of fun there. I think the question with Jaden Gibson going out is because he was definitely going to help, no doubt, in those rotational situations. He's a guy that you can throw in there, knows the offense well, is going to make plays for you. Who steps up there now? Who's going to be their guy rotating in? Is it going to be Jaquez Petaway? Is it Ivan Carreon? I think there's an opportunity now for somebody that we haven't really seen playing much as a Sooner to kind of take that leap. I kind of hope it's Jaquez Petaway, but we'll see.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there for the wide receivers. Going back to the main 4 that you mentioned, I agree. That seems to be like the guys you expect to make an impact at the wide receiver position this season. Statistically, I think you're gonna see the big plays come from Nick Anderson and Deion Burks. I think you said the same thing. They're probably gonna be the guys that are gonna be your 1,000-yard or near 1,000-yard receivers. It's really, and another question is which one of them is gonna step up to be the number 1 guy, the guy that Jackson Arnold can look to as a failsafe if something does go wrong, if he needs to just get rid of it quickly. Speed, I don't know their 40 times off the top of my head or their 100-yard dash times, but both have top end speed. The biggest difference is obviously Nick Anderson's about 5-6 inches taller than Deion. So again, that height difference. Deion, I just looked it up a second ago. Deion is our smallest, I guess, gonna be our smallest receiver. That's more than likely gonna make an impact this season. There is Zion Raggins, who I believe is definitely smaller in weight, and I think also slightly smaller in stature. But I don't think he makes an impact this year because of the weight situation. He's got to pack on pounds, more than likely someone that'll redshirt. Nick is 6. Oh man, I just
6'4", I think.
Yeah, he's like 6'4". Let's look it up. Let me look it up. But while I move on, the other guys, Jalil 6'1", Andrell is 6'1". Once he comes back, yeah, Nick is 6'4". Like you've got size on the outside and as a wide receiver. So Deion, as someone that can play both on the outside and in the slot as a receiver, you have so much versatility there. The looks that Seth Luttrell can give the opposing defenses can be nasty with the core of wide receivers he has. And you have Emmett Jones there as the coach, who's been an elite recruiter. Last year when he stepped in as a wide receiver coach, can agree that the wide receivers did take a jump from the year before where they were kind of in limbo on who their wide receiver coach was going to be. So he's made an impact in that room, and I expect it to be even more so in year 2. I think the only thing I disagree with is going to be Jalil and Drell, not because of the reasons you gave. I think not because I think you're wrong, but the reasons you gave I think work in Drell's detriment because he does need to slowly recover more than likely. I don't know if what his status is for game 1, but even if they kind of just slow play him in for over the first couple of games, Jalil more than likely gets more looks and more playing time, while Andrell kind of ramps himself up into real reps and live fire. So Jalil might have more of a 700, 750 yards uh, year, while Andrell gets 650, uh,
That's it.
600. And Jalil last year had 694. So I think that's kind of, unfortunately or unfortunately, however you want to see it, that's kind of where he's at because of the talent that's in that room now. He unfortunately, I think a few years ago, I know I did, and I think Brandon did as well, expected him to be the guy that made the huge jump to be the wide receiver one. Uh, didn't happen for him, but he is a reliable wide receiver. As much as people like to only remember the times he drops the ball, like every wide receiver, no wide receiver catches 100% of the balls that he gets targeted with. More often than not, the guy comes down with a football and makes a play. It's gonna be those ball security issues. Really, that is one thing that you just can't do. Ball security is job security in every sport.
Hmm.
If we can limit turnovers, I know we mentioned it with Jackson Arnold, but again, turnovers are going to be the thing that kills Oklahoma this season. It's not going to be the talent on either side of the ball. It's going to be, can you keep the ball and prevent from making mistakes?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think so. We agree. I think we both. Do you think that Anderson and Burks would be 1,000 yard guys?
Yeah, those two are the ones that are going to scare it. I mean, I could see a world where only one of them gets 1,000 yards and the other guy gets like 900 and something
Hmm.
because you have a wide receiver five that's, well, maybe a little bit more impactful than, and it ended up taking some yards away from wide receiver two. But they're going to be the two top guys for Jackson Arnold this season.
That's the big question with the receiver room is who's that five going to be? A guy that we didn't even mention that's been there for years now, JJ Hester. I mean, I think maybe he gets a chance finally now with Jaden Gibson being hurt. He's a guy that's similar. He's not quite as big as Jaden Gibson, but he's a pretty sure he's 6'2" plus. He's another guy that I think is gonna maybe more adequately fill the Jaden Gibson role as far as size if that's what they're looking for with his loss.
He's 6'4".
Yeah, so I mean he's a big dude. I think he can maybe it's his chance now to slide in there and finally be a part of the offense. It would be kind of cool to see.
And
But
don't
then
forget Brendan Thompson, too. And
yeah, I
I
mean
think that's one thing that this offense also unlocks with Jackson Arnold being the guy now is the arm that he has compared to Dylan. Dylan was inaccurate, quick. He wasn't gonna make too many mistakes in regard to where the ball was gonna be, but he can't launch the ball like Jackson can.
no, yeah, the deep ball is going to should be a more big part of our offense with Jackson Arnold for sure. But then you slide to running backs. Gavin Sawchuk last year, he only had 744 yards, which doesn't jump off the page at you, but he did it on 120 carries. He averaged 6 yards a carry. He kind of came onto the season late. They seemed like the first 6 weeks they were going to try to roll Tolly Walker. And I mean, I think Tolly Walker was making plays for him, but, like towards middle, late half of the season, whatever, it clearly became Gavin Sawchuk's team. And I think with a full season workload as running back one, we should expect him to be over 1,000 yards. I think that's kind of the bare minimum there for Gavin, just because he's running back one. If he keeps that 6 yards a carry up our average, he's definitely going to get more than 120 carries. So I think then you got to look at running back two, and you're hearing a lot of good things about Javante Barnes. That they showed it once, that Cheez It Bowl game against Florida State. They looked like they were going to be a nasty 1-2 punch for that next season coming up. And unfortunately for Javante, injuries and things like that kind of stopped him from doing that. But it looks now that Javante Barnes is ready to go. Should be the running back two. I fully expect Gavin Sawchuk to be one over 1,000 yards, 10, 12 touchdown range. And then if we can mix in Javante Barnes for 600, 700 yards, 5, 5, 6 even, and have a real 1-2 punch, give Gavin some breathers when he needs them. That's a mean running back duo too. And a lot of that depends on what the offensive line looks like. That is the biggest question mark for the Sooners this season. But I mean, I expect them to be good. Bill Bedenbaugh's not going to roll a bunch of slouches out there. It's going to be an Oklahoma offensive line still. So I think that running back room can bring you 1,700 yards between Gavin, Javante Barnes, or Sam Franklin, the transfer. Don't quite know for sure who's going to be that number two guy, but there's talent there.
Yeah, I think going into the season, we all expect Gavin to take a big jump here. I agree. He's the running back one. It would be crazy to not see him be the running back one for this team. You mentioned last year. I mean, the staff was really trying to force Marcus Major and Tawi Walker and the three-headed monster, I guess. And what, I'm not here to kind of to crap on anyone, so I'm not gonna reiterate any of the stuff I said last year. But at the end of the day, we all saw that Gavin Sawchuk is the guy that should have been there from day one as the starting running back. I think he was dealing with a little bit of like recovery from an injury, so that slowed him down a bit. But if he can stay healthy for the season, if he only misses 2 games, like middle of the season, and they're not huge games like this, he can have a great year statistically, be over 1,000 yards, potentially double digits in touchdowns. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's the big play guy, the guy that makes people miss. You keep him in on first down, second down, um, or when you're in negative territory. But Javante Barnes might, if he is running back too, or even Caleb Hicks, man, that guy isn't talked about much,
Hmm.
but he's someone that when he did get the few reps he did get last year, he looked good. He one of those guys, whoever running back two is, could be the one that steals the touchdowns. He could be the LeGarrette Blunt for this offense when you're in goal line situation and you need someone to punch it in and 2-3 yards. You don't want to get Jackson Arnold hurt in those spots when you're 2-3 yards away. Get Javante, and he's someone that's big enough and has proven in his freshman year he can take the hits in those situations. And he's a bruiser, good downhill runner. So I could see whoever running back two is, whether it's Javante or Caleb, being the guy that leads the team in running touchdowns, and Gavin being the guy that just makes your big plays, averages like 6-7 yards a carry, if not more. Like, dude is gonna be he's gonna look good, and it's gonna be fun to watch that offense with the stable of running backs that this team has. Even if he did go down, you have someone ready to go to come in to sub him for couple games if he needs them.
I'd like to see Gavin be around that 180 carry mark, about 60 more carries than last year, which is very doable in a 12 game season. I mean, that's not very many more carries per game to hit that 180 carry mark, maybe even 200. Because if you can develop that running game first, then it makes everything easier on everybody, Jackson Arnold especially. So that'd be nice. I think so. Then you go to tight end, which probably outside of the offensive line is the most interesting room to talk about with the Oklahoma offense. Last year we had Big Stog back, and we were all excited because Stogner was, making plays for us before he transferred to South Carolina. So he comes back, we're all excited to go, and he has his worst season as a college player. And I don't think that's really on him. I think that's maybe the way Jeff Levy's offense worked. They didn't really focus on the tight ends as much. That's definitely going to change now with Joe John and with Joe John being a play caller now, or at least a half play caller with
Oh, see.
with Steph Latrell. So they're going to target the tight ends more. So now you got to look at, is it going to be, is Bauer Sharp tight end one? Do we finally get to see Caden Helms get involved? We still have no idea what that guy's going to look like when he's healthy and playing. He could be a stud. We don't know. Or does Devon Mitchell get to play some as a freshman? I think those are the three guys that I think you're looking at the tight end room as the guys that have the most opportunity to play. Maybe I think we probably start the season with Bauer Sharp. But I mean, it'd be cool to see Caden Helms finally. What do you think?
Well, you also can't forget about Jake Roberts, transfer.
I did forget about Jake
Um,
Roberts. Yeah, good
so
call.
and a
Baylor.
guy that I think Oklahoma's high on. It really is. I think you mentioned it. Like Caden Helms, someone we haven't really seen play because of the injury bug that just has kept him from any regular season play. Um, Looking at the room, they constantly have to get transfers because for what my opinion is, sometimes they just don't play them early enough. Like Devon Mitchell is big enough. He's just as big as any of the other tight ends in that room, and he is probably 3 or 4 years younger than some of those guys in that room as well. So it's about his maturity. Can he, does he know the offense? I'm sure they're trying to figure out who's going to be best fit. But if Devon Mitchell isn't going to be tight end one this year, it seems kind of inevitable that it would be the case next year, assuming he puts on more muscle to be a good blocking tight end. But he's got the receiving chops already. He was a great high school tight end when it comes to catching the ball. I would say it's going to be Jake as one and Bauer as two. Like those two are the guys that are going to be battling for that tight end one spot starting the season, and then just whoever can show the most consistency as an overall tight end, not just a receiving threat, is going to be the one that gets the nod. And I mean, we have seen Oklahoma run two tight end sets too. So putting both of those guys out there wouldn't be crazy either. Just if they need different looks, if one guy's a little bit better blocker and can be, guy that stays on the inside to be the six man to block. So again, situational stuff we'll see, but I would say those two guys are going to be the ones that get more run at tight ends, and maybe Kane Helms sprinkles in every once in a while, or if an injury happens, he'll be like tight end three, statistically like what 400 or 500 yards,
I was going
a
to
few
say that
touchdowns.
if we can get 500 yards and 5 touchdowns out of whoever ends up being tight end one, it's going to be a big jump from last year, and just especially like in the red zone area. If we get a reliable tight end to make plays in the red area, that's really all you need. And then yeah, give me 500 yards, 5 touchdowns. I think that'd be a productive season for Roberts, Sharp, whoever's tight end one there. And I think we'd all be pretty pleased with that.
Yeah, it's really going to be like how they end up using the tight ends, because like you said, Lebby's offense didn't really look at him, or maybe they didn't have the tight ends they wanted for that offense. Whatever the case is, the tight ends just weren't utilized in the last couple of years. Um, so it are they going to get used more? You would expect so, since as you mentioned, Coach Finley is a co-OC. Latrell has history of utilizing his tight end in his offense. So implementing that would be nice to have another person that the defense has to worry about, especially if once you start going against linebackers that aren't very good, you have someone that can be a big threat in the middle of the field.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch the tight ends play this year. So then you go to the biggest question mark on the team, right? The offensive line. So obviously you're losing 5 starters, but that's not something that we took very lightly in the offseason. They added five dudes on the offensive line this offseason. Michael Tarquin from USC, Spencer Brown, Michigan State, Branson Hickman, SMU, Garen Hatchett from Washington, and I'm not even going to try the UNT transfers.
Fabechi Noeyu.
Fabechi Noeyu. Yeah, so I mean, good call there. It's impressive. But yeah, I mean, what does the offensive line look like? I think Branson Hickman is penciled in as a starting center. Do put up elite numbers. We did project our student starting offense earlier earlier in the offseason, but no matter who you throw out there, there's talent there. There's a bunch of names there. I think Hatchett's a guy that's going to play right away. Hickman, so you're gonna have at least two transfer guys playing. I think Spencer Brown has a good chance at tackle. I think Big Sexy's going to play. Maybe Jake Taylor. I mean, you don't know quite yet what it's going to look like, but the best five are going to be out there for sure with Coach Beatonbow. And there's a lot of players to plug and play. Josh Bates, there's a lot of guys you can plug and play. I think you won't see the true starting five of that Oklahoma front until probably week 3 or 4, maybe even later, 4 or 5, 4 or 5, but which you don't love to see, but it's kind of what it ends up being in a year like this for us, where you're playing with 5 new guys, and until they really have game time to play together side by side and kind of click and get it all together, you're not going to know what that best five looks like. And it doesn't have to be a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. There's talent around this offense everywhere. They just have to protect 3 or 4 seconds on a pass play and create a little bit of holes. And I like to think with Beatonbow running the show and the talent around him, I think that they will get it done. They're not going to be horrible. I don't think they're going to be a Joe Moore winning award winning line, but they're definitely going to be above adequate.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, all they got to do is block people, make some holes, keep the quarterback upright for 3 or 4 seconds. That's it. It's that
What you
easy.
got to do?
So
I
just
mean,
go out there and do it.
sounds so easy.
But I mean, yeah, it's gonna. I think ideally, and maybe someone may disagree, if they don't have guys that you see out there for 70-80% of the snaps by week 3, then this offensive line is in big trouble, because week 3 is Tulane, and Tulane isn't a bad team. They've had success in recent years. How good are they going to be? I'm going to be honest. I don't know. I'm pretty sure they lost their quarterback.
I think they were a
But
10-win team last year, but yeah,
they were, but I'm
yeah.
pretty sure they lost their quarterback. Their running game's usually pretty decent, so I mean, that's a different situation, but can they? Are they going to be that good again? We'll see. Tulane's definitely the first big test for this team, and you would like to have your starters be maybe not 100% solidified at least for the offensive line 100% solidified, but if we're seeing like constant rotation, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before where it felt like we were like basically leading up to the Texas game, we didn't know who was going to be the starting left guard, and they just rotated so much. I mean, even up to the Texas game, we ended up putting in Caden Green. I mean, it ended up working out, but there was a lot of rotation. I think that was due to injury, if I remember correctly. Still, though, you had, in my opinion, way too much rotation. It ended up working out, and obviously, like, it's just my opinion. What the hell do I know? It's Coach B. You and I agree. You got to trust in him as a coach because he doesn't put out bad offensive lines. They're gonna be good. It's just like as a fan, you'd like to see the resemblance of a cohesive unit by week 3, so that once you get into the SEC, I mean Tennessee's gonna be your opener, and they have a good defensive line. They have one of the better defensive players in the country returning on their defensive line in James Pierce Jr. So if you don't have your shit together by Tennessee, that defensive line is not going to make your life easy, and it's going to be the first taste of the SEC before you go on the road to Auburn,
Mm-hmm.
which again one of a stadium that is known to be one of the toughest places to play, might not have the biggest crowd by just the capacity of the stadium, but they don't make it's still one of the hardest places to play in the country in the SEC, and you have to know what the hell's going on and have 5 guys that are ready to play together by Tennessee at the latest.
I agree with you for the most part. I think you definitely have to have it pretty much together. I would say about 75% together by week 3 because Temple and Houston, we should blow through those games. We should win them. Tulane, I agree. They're a tougher school. I think they're very similar to our game against SMU last year. A team that's a good smaller school, a team that we should still beat pretty handedly. So you're not really going to know for sure yet until you do get to see Tennessee and James Pierce Jr. and guys like that. You'd like to be 75%, and then after that Tennessee game, whoever's playing best out there, I think you roll with that unit um, the rest of the season, at least as long as you can go. But you won't really know until you get to that Tennessee game what your offensive line truly looks like. So that's going to be a fun game and a huge test for everybody.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, this season is right around the corner. We have real football at the end of this week, and
We're
then
yeah,
come next video Tuesday of next week. We're
preview
gonna
time
be
already.
just a few short days from Fight Song Friday, and that's gonna be
Mm-hmm.
electric. I can't wait to walk into the office with Boomer Sooner blasting.
Yes, sir. Can't wait, man. We're almost there. We're about 10 days out as of this video from game day in Norman.
We're almost there. Well, hopefully you all enjoyed. Thank you all for watching. Let us know your thoughts. Do you think that we over exaggerated? We're too confident with some of these stats for these guys. Your offensive line, do you disagree with the guys that we had in our starting 5? Are they going to suck? Is there a lot of question marks? Let us know your thoughts. We always love hearing them. We really do. We like to go in the comment section and check out what people think and when they disagree. Again, let us know some suggestions about what you want to hear. We're probably going to start doing sprinkling some live streams here and there as the season goes on. As Brandon said, once season does start, and I think I mentioned this last week, we'll start doing some previews post game. Try to get some once we get into conference play. Try to get podcasts from those schools to come on and preview with us, so that we have knowledge on their side of the ball as well, and try to give you guys a better perspective of what this college football season is going to look like, because it's going to be fun. It's going to be huge. And I think Oklahoma has a good opportunity to make some surprises here, especially after what, I don't know if anyone saw, Colin Coward seems to just really hate Oklahoma. I don't know what Oklahoma
Shocked.
did to that guy,
Shocked to hear
but
that.
he didn't just hate Baker Mayfield. That guy hates a whole state.
Yeah. We hate that guy.
Well, thank you guys again. Make sure to follow, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. We'll see you next time.